Hello, welcome to the first episode of our 22-minute walk leadership podcast series. This week we are featuring Katie Wood, who is a coach for leaders, creatives, and business owners. Katie spoke at one of our virtual Brio sessions, which is a women's program we offered this year. And I think everyone, including myself, really enjoyed Katie. So Katie lives in Whitefish and she's here with us today. So Katie, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your connection to Wyoming, and what made you want to help leaders and business owners thrive in their own worlds.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a coach, as you said, and I mostly work with leaders of some sort. Either they're leading their own business or they're leading bigger teams and organizations. And I help them kind of overcome stress and burnout and kind of some of those things that after a while can really start to drag folks down. So helping them to create a little bit more ease in their work lives so that they can do the work that they really love and that matters. And I've been doing that for a while. I've loved the clients I've been able to work with. And my business I'm based in Montana now, but I was originally born in Wyoming and lived there for most of my life. Really, I grew up in Crowheart, which is a little tiny town that you all may have blinked and missed it when you've driven through. And I'm glad to be here and to kind of talk a little bit about what leaders can do this time of year, because it can be a little bit hectic.
Nice, thank you for that. And so you work with a lot of people who have busy schedules and busy lives, and this can obviously be a busy time of year. So what do you think that those people could benefit from?
Yeah, I think that this time of year, especially, I mean, obviously, when you're a leader in some capacity, like the whole year there's lots happening on your schedules, but then we layer on this extra, like all the holidays and end of year, wrapping up or planning or all those kind of things that come with the end of the year. And then you layer on like the cold and the dark, and it can just feel like a lot for people to go through. And what I find, and this is true for myself too, is that we end up getting in this like doing phase where we're just doing. We're just going down our list, checking off things on our to-do list, just trying to kind of like hustle through, like get through the holidays, as opposed to like allowing a little bit of space and allowing a little bit of quiet. And so I really feel like this, just even noticing that that's our habit, is to get into this like hustle and bustle, and just inviting ourselves to be like, wait, what if I can push pause a little bit? What if I can just create a little bit of space where I'm not being productive or checking something off the list? I think is hugely beneficial and something that we kind of don't get accolades for. So it's harder to, I don't know, want to do that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so for you personally, what are some of the ways that you find to like stop and reflect and intention set for the new year, or whatever time of year it is? What are
Yeah.
your go-to methods?
Well, one of the first things I like to do is actually just even in moments like this where it strikes me, oh, right, right, I should create a little space. One of the things I like to do is, put something on my calendar that is just for me, and it's blocked and I honor it just the way I would honor any other meeting or any other event. And it might be something for me where it's just like, yeah, I'm going to spend an hour and a half and I'm going to close the door to my office or go to a coffee shop and just like just bring my journal or a notebook. And I don't even have to like come up with a perfect intention setting plan or a perfect reflection thing, but just giving myself, like prioritizing that time, is one of the first things I love to do. And then as I think through, like if I'm in that space, then I just like to ask two simple questions essentially, which is, what am I celebrating in terms of reflections? I think we're so good at kind of glossing over what we've done, what's gone well, what we can celebrate, and we just go to like the next thing. Right? So we're just like always looking for the next thing. So really, like, what can I celebrate? What were kind of my wins? Uh, and like pop a bottle of champagne or like allow that celebration to happen, which
Love
I think is
it.
fun. Yeah. And then the second piece is just like, what did I learn? I think it's a nice reframe from like, where did I, what were my failures, or kind of some of those ways like, oh, that went so poorly, but you learn something from that. And so that's one of my favorite things to do in terms of reflections as well. Like, what can I celebrate, and what did I learn?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And going back on the point you said about when you're in a moment of life feeling chaotic and you're like, hold on, maybe I can pause some of this right now. I saw on your website you have a blog post titled 5 Questions to Ask Yourself to Create More Space in Your Brain. And I think that's a really relevant idea, as we ask people to go out on these walks and to let their minds wander. And I think for a lot of us, we could spend the whole 22 minutes, like you said, just thinking about the things that we need to do but haven't done yet, or just like the what's next. And so maybe you can explain what those 5 questions are and how people can use them to free up some of their brain space on their walks.
Yeah, yeah. And these are great questions to ask almost before you go on the walk, in essence, because they help you. You could be just running through your to-do list of like how to automate, or offload some of this stuff. But I love the question of just like, what can I put on autopilot? Right? There's so many things that we think were essential to implement, or to push forward, and there's so many ways that we can put things on autopilot in some way. And maybe it's just a small thing, right? Maybe it's just where it's like, okay, I need all of my email, like I'm going to put an autoresponder on my emails for a day or two so I can get caught up. Or it's something like, I'm going to order one of those like meal delivery kits for for a week so I can just have that be kind of taken care of. Right. So you're not thinking about, oh, what should I cook tonight? And what should I all the things. So I love that question of just like, what can I put on autopilot? The second question I like to ask is, what decisions can I make later? I think a lot of times, again, with this time of year, we're doing so much already. And if you're trying to decide, something for your work, or personal life, and you just can like, do I need to make this decision right now? Or can I just put it on my calendar for January 15th? I'm going to revisit that. And just giving yourself that little bit of like, oh yeah, you're right. I don't need to figure that out today, which I think is helpful.
Mhm.
The third question I love to ask is, what can come off my plate? And similar kind of to the first two, but what can come off my plate? And that might mean delegating to a partner, a kid, a family member, or somebody to help. Like, can this just come off my plate and be delegated to someone else? Or can it just be deleted entirely? Like, do I even need to bother with this thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I feel like with both that point and the last one, like, when does this have to be done now, or can this be done later? I have such a habit of, whenever something comes on my to-do list, I feel like it's all of a sudden at the top of the list. It's like, it needs to get done now. I mean, it feels good to get
Mhm.
things done. So it
Sure.
like makes sense, but some of them you just can't do right away. And it's so important to have those questions in your mind, and to remember, I can do this in a few months, or can someone else do this?
Right. Like we get into that kind of just where we're just responding, like things come at us and we're like, I guess I'll address this and I'll address this, instead of saying like, wait, is this what is requiring my attention right now? Can I push this
Yeah.
further back?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last two questions I like to ask are just, what's helping right now and what's not helping. And that can be really simple. Like those can be really simple things. Like you might decide that what's not helping me right now is spending time on social media. Okay, great. Can I create a boundary there? Can I just say, I'm not going to do that? Or what is helping right now? Going to my yoga class is becoming essential for me. So I'm really going to make sure I prioritize that. So just kind of that little space of reflection. And that can be a really nice thing to do on your walk, is just to kind of, oh yeah, wait, hold on. As I'm getting caught up in like the hustle and bustle, well, what's helping? What's not helping? And just, they can be little tiny micro adjustments where, okay, I'm going to turn down the volume on that, and I'm going to turn up the volume on this other thing that is really making a difference.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, something that your blog post made me think of is, there's this book called How to Become a Straight A Student. And I have not read it before, but my neighbor has, and he was telling me that in one part of it, they talk about how when you have all these tasks, you should focus on the tasks that like take the most amount of time or are the most important, really, which often take the most amount of time. Like the bigger tasks that we sort of like put off because it feels good to get tasks done, right? So like most people do all the like little tiny things. They're like, oh, I'm going to go do my laundry real quick and take out the trash. And then I'll get to this big thing. And that actually, if you just like sit down and focus on the big thing, then, you're going to get to those other tasks later. Those are not important, but you're going to keep putting off that big task. And that has like helped me so much after he's told me that with like work and personal tasks.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like it's that idea of the big thing is like, you're like, oh, I just want the easy win. So I just do all
Yeah.
the little things that never moves the needle. The other thing I really like to think about with that, of course, is like, if there's the big task, I can start to freeze a little bit with that. Like, oh, well, I need to have everything in place to do that thing. And so I'm a huge step of like, okay, or a fan of like baby steps. Like what's the very first tiny task? So you're almost reverse engineering it. Like, okay, I'm going to give myself 10 tiny tasks that I will feel more motivated to check off the list.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Tricking your brain into thinking you're doing the small things.
Right. And it might be the smallest thing, like, oh, I'm just going to block my calendar for 30 minutes first. Okay. Oh, check. I did that. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love writing the tiniest things on my to-do list. Like things that I just did a minute ago, I'll write on my to-do list and then cross off.
So satisfying.
Yes, did it.
Yeah. I love it.
What I have another question here. What's one lesson that your career as a coach and business owner has taught you that you think could be valuable to everyone?
Mm. Yeah, so many lessons. I feel like that's like the older I get, the more I'm like, will I ever just like be done learning lessons? I don't think so. I think they just keep coming. Well, in specifically in related to this, I think there is an element of, and this is, I think it is originally like a military term or phrase, but slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I feel like this is kind of constantly where I have to keep coming back to the idea of like, it's counterintuitive to slow down, right? It's counterintuitive to like, whoa, let's take a step. Let's do this slowly, whether that's like giving yourself some time off or space to think or whatever it might be. But just like knowing that slowing down actually creates fewer bumps in the road, and then you don't have to go back and fix things. So you actually get there faster. And I think this can be applied to kind of this almost mindfulness journey as well, where we think like, I don't have time for that, or like I'll just get through it and then I'll rest, or then I'll catch up on my vacation. But if we can just start to implement these little, like just 22 minutes a week, right? Just slowing down for just that little bit of time, we start to go, oh yeah, it gives us time to think. We might like have an idea that allows us to, get somewhere we want to go. Like the thing you've been chewing on for a while comes to you when you actually slow down a little bit and create some space. So I think maybe that's what I would say is one of my lessons.
That's a great lesson. Yeah. And then I have a question for all of our entrepreneurs or business owners out there. What is your favorite productivity hack for entrepreneurship
Mm,
or for entrepreneurs?
yeah. I I don't know if this is, I mean, I guess it's a hack to some degree, but I think that um entrepreneurs, especially like if you're not working with a bigger team, like at some point you might grow your business and then you have a bigger team and there's a lot more structure that comes into play. But I think for a lot of like newer entrepreneurs who are working with really small teams, nimble teams, or they're maybe like just a solopreneur of some sort, time blocking, time management of some sort, I think is one of the biggest things people get caught up on. They think that things aren't going to take as long as they are, or they don't really have a sense of how it's going to go. So a lot of times one of my favorite things is to, when you write your to-do list, here's what I'm going to accomplish today. I like to start to estimate, like time estimate. I think this is going to take an hour. I think this is going to take 30 minutes. I think this is going to take whatever. And the first thing I like to have people do is like add up those hours And sometimes you'll be like, wait, I've scheduled 16 hours worth of work today for myself. Like, okay, that's your first sign that something needs to be adjusted. But also it then helps you have this check to say like, oh, I thought this was going to take half an hour. It took 4 hours. Okay, great. So like there's it's like over time you become a lot more productive because you're really honed in on what time do things actually take and how can I kind of be more effective in my planning.
Mhm. Yeah, my fiance is always reminding me that feelings get hurt or people get upset when expectations do not meet reality, and I am constantly setting myself up for not meeting my own expectations because every day I'm like I have like all these things on my to-do list, and it's like if I were to just time them out,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. It can't realistically happen, and then at the end of the day, I'm like, dang, I wasn't very productive.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it is like yeah, you'll have something on your list like build website. You're like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
First of all, it's going to take like 40 hours and then you're disappointed that you haven't like checked it off at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, any of those times where we can kind of reset our expectations or have more realistic expectations, then you
Mhm.
have that sense of satisfaction at the end of the day
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you help a lot of people move forward with their visions. And so what is it that you see that is like holding people back most of the time? Like why do most people come to you? Um, is there like a broad one that you see or a common one you see happening often, or is it pretty situational?
It depends. I think it depends a little bit on whether they're newer in business or they've been doing their work for a long time. If they're newer to either that particular job or to that business, then a lot of it, honestly, things that hold them back is just this either sense of I'm not good enough yet, like I can't be like, who am I to be doing this sort of thing? Um, which of course like there's just learning curves and the more I always say that clarity comes from taking action, right? Like you need to take the action, the clarity will come, the confidence will come from there. So I feel like there's a lot of yeah, that's like one thing that holds them back is just that lack of like owning it and having some confidence behind it. For people who've been doing it a little bit longer, I find the thing that holds them back or starts to stifle their work or their vision is, maybe they started with a really clear vision and over time it's kind of morphed and changed and situations have made their vision, either they've strayed from it a little bit, or they've just grown and changed and they're not as aligned with it as they used to be. And they've kind of like fallen out of of love with it. Sounds cheesy, but they've kind of fallen out of love with this vision they have. And so part of it is coming back to this sense of like, okay, who are you? What do you value? What's important for you? And then making some adjustments to their business, the way they're working, so that it is more in line with who they want to be and what they kind of the impact they want to have in the world.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, that makes sense now that you say it. Like imposter syndrome, everyone has that. That's huge. And then just like being in the routine and doing the same thing every day that you used to get so excited about and love, and now you're like, all right, now what?
Yeah, yeah, and we can really start to be like, "Meh, maybe I'll just like scrap the whole thing," which is also fine if that's where you are. But I've had so many fun kind of work with people who really have like made this pivot from being, not super excited about what they're doing, and they start to shift. I'm like, oh wait, if I just make this one tweak with whether it's the way I just deliver something or it's the people I serve, okay, then there's like this reinvigorated sense
Mhm.
of what they're doing.
Wow. And so I
Yeah.
have one final question for you. So as we get people in the habit of doing this through the month of December, going on these walks where they reflect and in silence,
Mhm.
how do you have a way to encourage people to keep doing it throughout the year, not just through our challenge, but kind of like a pro tip to keeping habits? Or
Yeah.
is it just like try harder, keep doing it?
Uh, so I'd say my pro tip for what it's worth for so many things really comes back to the sense of curiosity. And I think that we can get in a sense of like, well, this is a good this is a good habit to have, and so I should do it more. And like we kind of put this pressure on ourselves to like, if I really had some discipline, I would do this every week, and like I'm going to keep this. And it starts to feel like a little bit, I don't know, crunchy, or starts to feel like, yeah, it feels not as inspiring. And so my tip in so many situations is, can I just tap into curiosity? Like, I wonder if I can do this one more week. I wonder if it, like, is this feeling good? I think it feels pretty good. Let me just see what it would feel like if I did this 2 times a week. What would this feel like if I did most of my walks in silence? So it's just allowing yourself to kind of get curious and lean into that exploratory feeling, as opposed to kind of forcing yourself to like do a thing because you should do it, but instead leaning into curiosity.
Hmm. That's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah.
It makes it lighter anyway. I
Yeah,
find that
totally.
helpful.
Okay, and then I have a bonus question.
Ooh.
What was it like to grow up in Crowheart?
Oh gosh, I actually loved it so much. I didn't really realize it was such a unique experience until I went to college. I went to school in Oregon, and I realized that like most people, and this is, there's so many towns in Wyoming that are like that, like little tiny,
Mhm.
tiny towns. But I didn't realize that like most people in the rest of the US like are from larger cities, and they have malls nearby, and they have conveniences. And
Right.
um yeah, riding the bus however many miles, 30 minutes anyway, to Du Bois for school is like not a super common experience, but
Right.
I loved it.
Or like most people, if they grew up in a town of 300, there was like another town of 300 10 minutes away. And then, it was like more of
Exactly.
a metropolis than, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the thing I always think about with growing up in Wyoming is that playing on sports teams, you're like, okay, our closest game is like 2 hours away or an hour and a half away, and then our farthest game we might drive 7 hours for one high school basketball game,
Yeah.
which it sounds absurd now that I think
Totally.
about that. But at the time, it was like, of course you do that. It's just what you do. So
Yeah.
it's kind of unique in that way.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your expertise with everyone. And thanks for being a part of the 22-minute challenge.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. This is so fun.
The 22-minute Leadership Wyoming podcast series is brought to you by Hilltop Bank in Central Wyoming. Thank you for your support.